a Nigerian prince who is stranded, I don't know, in the UK, and they inherited large amounts of money and they want to share with you. So graciously ask yourself, who is this Nigerian prince who is in love with me and wants to share their money with me? When did we start talking? How do I know them beyond this email that's telling me about this large inheritance that they supposedly have somewhere? Or maybe someone will tell you, because we are in activism, sometimes you fall for a malicious link because it's talking about an opportunity for funding. Yeah? So, for example, I see here Oxfam is among the development partners for this project. Sometimes, if you, let's say you receive a link or someone shares a link with you that looks like it's from Oxfam, yeah? First, before you click on that link, first go to Oxfam's official website and see if any such information exists there, right? Before you click. Like, it's really about our behaviors, our perceptions, our comprehension of the world around us. Yeah? Similarly to mobile money scams. Someone calls you up and tells you, we are going to block your number. If you don't, I don't know, put in these digits. But if you've been using this number for a period of less than 5 years, because I know we keep registering, I think, every like 5 years, and you're being told the number is going to get blocked, you tell the person, it's okay, block it. Because you can always walk to MTN the next day and get your number unblocked, if indeed it is genuinely going to get blocked. But also, ask around your circles. Maybe someone has had a similar experience and they can warn you before you fall into that trap. Because personally, I've experienced Airtel legitimately wanting to block my number because I hadn't re-registered it with the new system, right? But they didn't block it like one day. It wasn't blocked. I didn't receive a phone call telling me they're going to block my number. They just started small, by first blocking large Airtel money transactions, so you couldn't transact beyond, I couldn't transact, I think, beyond 50,000 UGX on my Airtel money account. And so when I inquired from Airtel, official Airtel customer care, they told me it is because of ABCD. Right? So sometimes it's also good to ask around your networks and circles and ask them how, if maybe someone has gone through a similar experience, how they overcame it or what they went, the steps they took to go through it before you fall. Before you fall victim. Again, if something is too good to be true, it is too good to be true, honestly. If you've been told you've won a car from MTN Momo, and you didn't participate in the draw, unless you have an auntie at MTN. Sometimes I forget we are in Uganda. Sometimes I forget we are in Uganda. Because surely, if you don't know anyone, any executive at that company, then, you also have to think about how come you were handpicked for this very brilliant gift. The other way of how you can get infected is browsing on unsecure websites. Some websites are not secure. And how do you tell a secure website from an unsecure website? How? Have we seen this somewhere? HTTP. This is the beginning of a URL, of a link, right? So what is the difference here between the upper and the lower? Lower has an S. So this S stands for secure. So websites that load without the S are not secure. Websites that load with HTTPS are the secure versions. And different platforms, so of course, privacy regulations have asked platforms to always have a secure version of their website. But sometimes they don't all comply. And also there are like millions and billions of websites available now. So not everyone will comply with that security feature. So be very critical when you're loading a website. It should be HTTPS. Sometimes you also get infected by downloading infected files and apps. So it could be through email, downloading attachments through email. It could be downloading files through different social media platforms, WhatsApp, Instagram. All of them have now features to download files and apps. And so you need to be very critical around what information, what files you're downloading. The same goes for the apps that we download onto our devices. Where are you downloading them from? Is it from the legitimate Play Store? Yeah, the legitimate store. So App Store for Apple, Google Play Store for Android. Or is it through a third-party website? All these things are to be critically looked at. So any app that you're downloading needs to be from the official App Store. So if you're using iPhone, from the official Apple App Store. If you're using Android, from the official Google Play Store. That minimizes the risk of you downloading infected apps. Then the last point is around using a device with a vulnerable operating system. This means that your operating system hasn't been updated in so long. So every app you're using on your phone or your computer needs to be the latest version, as in that was released like 2 seconds ago. Yeah? It needs to be the latest version. Your operating system, you know, sometimes our phones have system updates. And that thing on the settings is red. It's always constantly warning you, system update available, system update available. But you cancel, not now, not now, not now. You're so busy writing a report, you're writing this, you're writing you're busy on Zoom, you're like, not now, not now. That not now might come at a cost later. Why? This is because when developers are creating software, yeah? So let's imagine this is our nice little software package. So maybe it is Facebook or whatever it is, whichever software it is that has been developed, yeah? Most times this software is released at this level. Why? Because it is still working as it's supposed to, but also because we are the test subjects. As the end users, we test this technology for the big tech companies so they can see how to improve on it and our user experience. So every time you update either that app or the operating system, this gap here that was open at the date of release closes a little bit more, right? So every update closes this software a bit more. So every time you don't update the latest version, the gap here of vulnerabilities is still open. This is why updating our software and apps is very important. So every time you receive an update notification, whether it is for your system update or for a particular app, please update. Please update. All right, so that is how you can get infected. Some malware is general to target anyone who falls into the trap. Some of it is targeted. Some people might be more vocal as activists than others, and so they are targeted more than the rest of us, right? So it depends on your public profile, but also your digital safety habits. Hey, my time is almost up, but okay. So some tips that you can use to protect your device from malware. Number one, don't jailbreak. What do I mean by jailbreak? Sometimes you go to Mtasa Cafero, you have a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, and then you have the phone that you bought, that you want to buy, but it is locked. Yeah, blah, yeah. Then you get your guy, you tell the guy, unlock the phone for me. Then they unlock it. Now when they unlock it, it will work. But unlocking it destroys some very critical security features that are inbuilt in that phone. So That is what is called jailbreaking the device. So please, if you know that your device, your phone or your laptop, has a case of jailbreak, it was unlocked, it was previously locked and now unlocked, it is not a safe device to use because it makes it more vulnerable to malware, because it loses some critical security, inbuilt security features. Number 2, use a VPN. So Drake was telling us Wi-Fi password, Wi-Fi password, Wi-Fi password. But I implore you, friends, if you're on public Wi-Fi, such as Arch Apartments Hotel Wi-Fi, please use a VPN. What a VPN? I know Ugandans know VPN because of OTT and Facebook, so at least we've all had experience using a VPN. But beyond bypassing OTT or beyond bypassing Facebook censorship in Uganda, what VPNs do is that they create a tunnel where you can exist in your online activities alone, away from prying eyes. So, being on public Wi-Fi, such as the hotel Wi-Fi, for example, or airport Wi-Fi or restaurant Wi-Fis, you're not the one in control of that Wi-Fi. So you don't know who on that same network or the person controlling the network, what they are able to track about your online activities as you're using the Wi-Fi in real time. But using a VPN cuts off their tracking and prying eyes, which is why when we were still paying social media tax, OTT, when you turned on a VPN, you bypass the tax because government instructed MTN and Airtel to block anyone accessing social media platforms automatically unless they've paid the tax. However, when you turn on your VPN, Airtel can only see that you've connected to a VPN, but they won't know that you've gone to Facebook, to Instagram, to wherever. If your VPN is turned on, if it isn't turned on, everything you do is visible. Okay, the websites you visit are visible to whoever is interested in tracking your online activities. So always use a VPN. I've said this already, but I'll say it again. Download apps from reputable sources. So, official app stores. Encrypt your data. Encryption is a whole bigger topic, but it's really scrambling information until it gets to the intended recipient who has the key to decrypt it. And we shall talk about this in detail when CCG invites us back again. Then update all your software and hardware. We've talked about this again, time and time again. Now, for organizations, it's important to train staff, including all support staff, on digital security. It is important at organizational level to train everyone, including support staff, about malware, about phishing, about all the other digital security measures. Then we need to have mobile device policies in place, again at organizational level, whether it is company level management, whether it is employee level. Everyone needs to have a mobile device policy in place and to know what to do in case of a digital threat. Then lastly, but most importantly, install an antivirus on your device. There is a misconception that iPhones don't need antiviruses, they are secure enough. Blackberries don't need antiviruses, they are secure enough. There is no foolproof method. Whether you have an iPhone, whether you have a itel, whether you have Samsung, whether you have Blackberry, Nokia, whatever brand you have, always install an antivirus on your device. It is very important. Also, the misconception around antiviruses being for desktops and not for mobile phones is wrong. It's a misconception. Even our mobile phones need antiviruses. So always install an antivirus. Are we together? Anything we haven't talked about in malware that you want to know about, that we haven't touched on, that is burning? We are good. So now we are champions of malware. We won't fall in the trap. No sharing USB flashes, no clicking on random links. I usually also encourage people, if you receive an email or a message from someone and it contains a link, and you are not expecting that person to send you a link, or probably that's not how your relationship usually is, call them up and ask, did you just send me a link? Because chances are they've also been hacked, and the hacker is using their accounts to try and get more people to be hacked. So try, call up the person, say, hi, you sent me a WhatsApp message with a link from UN. Like, did you send the link? Do you know where the link goes before you click on it? Yes, you're going to spend airtime, but your safety is priceless. Now, I wanted to touch on secure communications really briefly. Yeah? So secure communications include just making sure that you're sending and receiving communication safely. In terms of messaging platforms, we have WhatsApp. So I'm going to do a difference between WhatsApp and Signal. For example, how many of us here know Signal? Or use Signal? Awesome. So Signal is also a messaging platform similar to WhatsApp or any other messaging platform, Telegram, and so on and so forth. Now you see how with WhatsApp, when you open a chat, they tell you this chat has end-to-end encryption. Yeah? What that means is that if I'm chatting with you on WhatsApp, our conversations are only between you and I. Like WhatsApp is not prying in this. They have no access to our conversations, like what the telecom service providers do. Because if you send an SMS or if you make a direct phone call, those companies have a copy of what you talk about, what the conversation looks like. Direct SMSs and direct phone calls. Now WhatsApp, by implementing end-to-end encryption, gives us the assurance that WhatsApp as a company or their third-party companies are not listening into our WhatsApp calls and WhatsApp chats. However, and Signal has the same features as well, end-to-end encryption on Signal chats. So if the person you're chatting with on Signal, that conversation is just between the two of you. Signal won't have a copy of that information. Now the difference is Signal was developed by tech activists. It was developed by people who prioritize privacy. It was developed by people who prioritize safety, digital safety, right? Of our information, of our data, of our conversations. WhatsApp, yes, they say they have all these things in place, but it's a commercial business. So we can't trust that what they say is true. We can't trust that tomorrow if the government was looking for me and they asked WhatsApp for my WhatsApp conversations, that they wouldn't provide them, right? But we can trust that Signal is true to their word. And that's because of some technical things, but mostly it's around their code and their coding. So Signal is completely open source. Other coders or other software developers can see Signal's source code and verify that what they tell us in terms of their privacy and security features is actually true. Whereas for WhatsApp, part of their code is open and part of it is closed. So developers and coders can't audit WhatsApp's source code to verify that when they say we have end-to-end encryption, they have end-to-end encryption. That's why I put WhatsApp versus Signal. So WhatsApp is very popular. It's what you would ideally find everyone who has a smartphone using. Signal, most times you have to ask someone to download it first if you've had some digital security knowledge. You have to ask someone to download it first. So it's not as easily, as more popular as WhatsApp. So use these platforms from a point of knowledge. WhatsApp is safe up to a point. WhatsApp is definitely safer than direct calls or direct SMSs. Definitely 100%. Is it as safe as Signal? We are not sure. So just for you to know and use these platforms accordingly. If you have very sensitive information, it is better you use signal to pass that information along. Then for email, I know we have Gmail accounts and they are very easy to use. Everyone has a Gmail account. You can just use Google Drive, Google Docs, everything syncs, everything makes sense and everything. But there is another mail service provider called Proton Mail. Proton Mail is basically the signal of email service providers. It encrypts your email conversations. It has very many safety features that are not at Gmail. So Proton Mail is a more secure option to Gmail. Again, I don't work at Gmail. I don't work at Proton Mail. This is just information for you to use from a point of knowledge. Yeah. So that's it for me. I do have a couple of slides that I didn't share here, but I will share my presentation with CCG and ask that they share it with you to accompany you beyond. Yeah? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. I hope we get to do this again.
Let's give another thunderous round of applause, please. Hasn't she been excellent? I hope you're also satisfied. I know you must be hungry as well. Your breakfast is safe and sound the other side. Thank you all for paying attention. Just a quick precursor. I just want to move the mic around and see what we've picked from the presentation that we've had with Sandra. Yes, you have questions? All right. Let's just do that quick exercise.
So, thank you, Drake. So as the mic passes around, you can just think about these 3 questions. You don't have to answer all 3 of them, but just for you to think about. Number 1, where do you feel digitally confident versus where you feel digitally vulnerable? Having had this conversation, where do you think you're confident or vulnerable digitally? Number 2, what are some of those digital threats that, as we're discussing, that came up that kind of surprised you? That maybe it was something new, that they surprised you, or it didn't, just that resonated with you, that gave you that light bulb moment. And then finally, what new strategies will you try going forward to keep your online spaces safer?
All right. As we've had those guiding questions, as we go ahead and respond to what we've picked and what we've learned, I would just like to recognize the presence of our partner, Mr. Hood Luboa, who is representing Oxfam. You're most welcome. Very happy to have you. He's right there behind. Let's just give him a round of applause, please. All right. So let's get to, I'm just going to randomly pick, and I want this to be extremely engaging and extremely interesting as well. So from the guiding questions that we have received, I'll randomly pick, tell me what you've learned in line with the questions that you have had, and then we can pick it on from there and go to our next session on the agenda. So I'll start with the gentleman right next to Dr. Charles in a necktie. Oh, you turned the other side. You're the only one that side. So let's start with you. What did you pick? What did you learn? And yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very simple that just to be very keen on anything I put on any platform on the cloud, and also think about how it could impact either my business or my personality, or I could say as a name. Yeah.
Thank you. Pass the mic next to the lady next to you.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I think for me, my biggest takeaway from today's session is the use of a password manager. Some of us were feeling like superheroes, getting over 30 passwords in our heads, yet there is something like a password manager. It makes things quite easy. So that to me was my biggest takeaway, understanding that there are different service providers that can provide password management. And thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing.
Thank you. As the mic keeps moving around to pick our thoughts on what we've learned, feel free to go ahead and post on X. The hashtags are Recipe Project, Digital Rights UG, Civic Space TV. Go ahead and tag Civic Space TV and Center for Constitutional Governance. Philip,
Anyone here?
give the mic just to the gentleman in front of you.
So, firstly, one thing really caught my eye and surprised me, and it was the use of public Wi-Fi. And immediately they talked about it. I started looking for a VPN because it's something we really take for granted, but she was really right when it came to security. Then a new strategy, and one that I was also shocked I already had, was the password manager. So when she talked about the password manager, I went to my computer and I realized I actually have one, but I just didn't notice it. So yeah, that's what we've really learned.
Interesting. The lady right next to him.
I'm Rebecca Nanono. So I was thinking about how Signal is both safe and unsafe. Yeah, Signal. Okay. I also support the use of Signal. That's why I have a sticker here. But like I've been thinking as someone who uses Signal, and you know when you install Signal, every time you install, it's not like how you install WhatsApp and you're automatically added back into your groups or you get all your old chats. So for me, I feel like just that small feature is already a security concern for me, because I felt really insecure. Like some months back, I was in a specific WhatsApp group, and just having to remind the people like in certain Signal groups to add me back in the groups was already like insecure, in my opinion.
Thank you. Right now, I'm just going to voluntarily ask anyone who has. Oh yeah, sure.
I have someone here.
Then up here.
Okay, Victoria from Women's Pro Bono Initiative. On the first question, where do you feel digitally confident? Okay, where I feel digitally confident is the use of WhatsApp. I'm glad to hear that it has end-to-end encrypted, and then it's better than these direct messages we send. And then what surprised me most was the Trojan horse. I think I've seen that somewhere. I've experienced it. So then the third question, what I'm going to try is get new passwords for each of my platforms. Thank you.
I think for me, I'll add my voice to the whole Trojan malware story that Sandra told us. At least now, when I'm out there, I'll speak like a tech expert and be like, "Hi, do you know the story behind the Trojan, the Trojan malware?" You know, and I'll just spew all these different things you've taught us. Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Let's have him then come that side.
All right. Many thanks for the great sharing. Mine is word of appreciation for the words that you have shared with us. You apparently sharing. You actually made us to feel how much we are, we are not informed about digital security and what have you. Apparently, a person like me holds a testimony which is as such. The Trojan horse that you did talk about, I fell prey to it. I nearly survived, but until I also landed on someone who do understand the IT technologies and what have you. So I think this kind of conversation is really, really important, and I don't take it for granted. I pray that you surrender to us some of these documents that you shared with us for purposes of reference or for further consumption at a later time. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you. The lady.
Thank you so much. I want to thank our facilitator for opening our eyes and the entire team that is sponsoring this. For me, one thing I've concluded is that there is no safety online. It does not exist. What we are doing is mitigation, but we cannot claim to be safe however much you do. One of the things that I'm also taking home is the password manager. Apparently, being a media person, I have listened to so many people that have spoken to me about password managers and everything. Unfortunately, I keep forgetting my password, so I don't have a password even for my phone. It's open, and so many people wonder how I do it, but it's because I keep forgetting my passwords. And you know, when they keep telling you about how it's unsafe to use names of children that you will keep remembering, then the entire thing of low uppercase, then question mark, then this, and then you forget the next moment. But I think the password manager really works miracles. It's something that I hope to try. And then the updating, I must am a culprit. Sometimes you see an app popping up for an update and you keep pushing, you say not now, not now, not now, you know? And you know, it's protecting you. So we are learning a lot, and I like the fact that when I came for this training, I expected things to do with tech, computers, hard stuff. But these are things that we can do, issues to do with password, which site is safe, which link do you open, what do you do? So it's basically about how we carry ourselves online and what we do that determines our safety, not per se the apps. Thank you.
Thank you. Personally, I think if you had to look back on the expected outcome of today's discussion, I think we have almost achieved everything, because it looks like we came not knowing and we're leaving with a lot of information, and that goes without saying. Thank you, Sandra. Maybe food for thought, and possibly as we wind up and we just think about this. Some time back I was having a conversation with a friend. Oftentimes we download apps and you either accept their policies or not access the apps at all. You go into a website, you either accept the cookies or fail to use the website. And maybe the conversation can be political or otherwise. For example, we have these big websites, we have these big apps. If, let's say, you downloaded WhatsApp, you have to go ahead and accept their policies before you can sign up. Now, maybe we as developing countries, as a very minute country on the globe, how can we be key players and make a stand that if someone doesn't want to accept your policies, doesn't want to accept your cookies, can still go ahead and use your platform without being automatically signed out because you failed to accept their policies? Something you can maybe guide, and then we can have Dr. Charles wind us on the day with the next item on the agenda. Food for thought. Sandra. Yeah.
Drake always throwing a spanner in the works. Honestly speaking, I think one of us mentioned that we can never really be secure online. Again, because these spaces were not made for people like us, for black bodies, African bodies to exist online. We weren't thought of when this internet was being developed. And then also going back to the point around capitalism. So Meta, as a company that owns WhatsApp, has more power than the state of Uganda. That is just reality. In the global hierarchy and global influence and global conversations, Meta, as a business, has more power, money, and influence than the state of Uganda. So that is the base, that is the beginning of our negotiating power with them.
I just want to interject you right there. So how can we, as developing, because here in this room we have activists, we have activists, we have leaders, and we possibly have the next woman of parliament, member of parliament in this room, and we are looking at because honestly speaking, the budget alone of Meta is quite enormous, can't be compared to what Uganda has.
Exactly.
So you're comparing a state and an entity,
And a business.
a business per se, a business which is way more superior and stronger than the state of Uganda. So how can we as activists in this room, as key players in this, of course, we without them, we can't, of course, at this point, internet and all those platforms are a necessity. But also without us, at some point, they cannot exist. So how can we then strike that balance?
Off the top of my head,
Yes.
what I can think of as civil society actors that we need to also put our energies into is the conversations around internet governance. So when we're listing the digital threats and all, I wrote an acronym, IG,
Yes.
somewhere on the flip chart. So IG stands for internet governance. I think civil society voices are largely lacking in internet governance conversations, because even us as Her Internet, when we are in those spaces, usually we are the only community organization there.
Exactly.
The others are
That
big
is what I was
networks
looking
and
for.
stuff. So yeah,
That is what I was looking for.
conversations on internet governance.
Now that is why this particular workshop is necessary, because as she has something to say. This conversation is therefore necessary because the space, this particular conversation and space is very broad and big, very necessary, and yet there are few voices that are involved. So after this particular conversation, many more people would like to be involved in the internet governance conversation, get more knowledge, get more involved, and possibly partner with Her Internet and Center for Constitutional Governance and partners like Oxfam, and we push this conversation. Otherwise, let's listen in from Omega, then we can have Dr. Charles.
Okay.
come
Okay.
and
So
take
what
us
I'll
away.
say about that question on Meta having more power than
Yeah.
the state, it could be true. It could be false. It has both ways. If we're looking at it in terms of money and resources, Meta may actually have more resources at its disposal. But that is not to say that the government of Uganda does not have power to make sure that Meta is in compliance with what? Certain guidelines. So, a good example, Facebook. Remember? For how long was Facebook non-operational in the country? Just the geographical ability for an application or an organization that is working in social media to operate in Uganda, it can actually be stopped by the Ministry of ICT. So different countries have different jurisdictions, right? So the government of Uganda has jurisdiction over what? Uganda. You cannot operate in Uganda without having certain licenses to operate in Uganda. So the question here is, end users of the internet are not going to be protected by themselves. They have to be protected by their what? Their governments. Uganda may not have a lot of leveraging power with Facebook, because if I was on the other side of Facebook and I'm the one doing the numbers, I would say how much advertisement are we getting in Uganda, right? And what does that contribute to our total revenue? Who is losing more? But if civil society organizations organize themselves all through Africa and see how to engage blocks like the African Union, right? And say that this is our bare minimum of what we want these organizations to adhere to, right? Then it has to be a collective block. You can't do it individually as a country because you'll be knocked out. But if you do it as a sort of, and this is to take out, not to take out Europeans and that whole block, they can be part of it. But Africa's situation is extremely unique. The example that all the examples that you gave today, you realize that our police and our justice system is not involved in social media. If you got harassed right now, there is no option there that has a number that is linked to a national security service. It is all up to those people. Report. And even when you report, the most you can get, I remember one time when I was harassed online with a literal, it was a message that says rise or drown, sink or something. Then they sent me a number. Imagine someone sends you a number in a message, right? So it's almost insinuated, call this number for what's next. Do you know how extremely disturbing that is? So my only option at that point was to delete. But imagine we had some sort of national incorporation in the system that I just forward this to a certain number. Now, this is the last point I'm going to make. I know we're out of time. These applications and this facade that you cannot trace people online is a lie, right? Because when you're registering to be on Facebook, you use a number, right? That number is registered with Airtel, right? What do you use to register that number? A national ID. What does your national ID have? It has your name, it has your details, it has your date of birth. So behind these people are actual people, but there has to be some form of regulation. You have to get telecommunications involved. You have to get NERA involved. So if they ban a certain number, they are not just banning 0700 44 84 94. They are banning that person. Any other time that the person behind that number tries to get an account, it will be blocked. Then you won't be having any of these things. Yeah.
That said, this is now why we need to have this next particular item on the agenda, the issue of online advocacy strategies, because not everyone has the access to internet, not everyone has the access to the information that some of us in this room possess, because there is someone in the rural area who barely knows anything about what we've been talking about, malware, password management. They do not know. But as very key actors in this country, as activists, as a civil society organization, we play a critical role in steering this ship. So at this point in time, I would like to welcome Dr. Charles Toli Tatia, the Associate Director at Center for Constitutional Governance, to take us through online strategies that we as activists can go ahead and employ with the knowledge that we have gained from Ms. Sandra Krichiriza. Let's give Dr. Charles Tatia a round of applause, and a round of applause to ourselves for paying attention up to this point. Dr. Charles, you're most welcome. Yes, as Dr. Charles comes, please feel free to share content on your X platforms. The hashtags are there: Recipe Project, Digital Rights UG, and Civic Space TV. Don't forget to tag Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. Thank you. Dr. Charles, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking our previous facilitator, Sandra. I think you did a pretty wonderful job. As you can see of my stature, I am that sometimes when you get an invite to cyber tech talk, you're a bit hesitant, because I learned my computer when we still wrote the word DOS and stuff like that. But what was my pick from Sandra's wonderful presentation was that the real challenge we have is nothing but the challenge of the unknown. Our biggest challenge is actually fear, and fear of the unknown. Because she makes a very interesting point when she says cyber security or literacy or awareness is not so much about the hardware, the technologies, because they are vast, and we know technology is dynamic and moving and changing very fast. But it's so much about the attitudes. It's so much about you, it's so much about me, and how we choose to interact or not. And I think that's a very powerful point. Especially in a country like ours. I do not know how much facts you have about this country. But for instance, do you know that Uganda has the second largest population of young people in the world? Do you know how many people are in the world? about 6 billion. Do you know what it means to be in a position of the second with the youngest people? So that means what happens to a young person? Just take a picture of a child. That means a lot of nurturing is going on. A lot of nurturing has to go on. So opportunities like this are great. Mine has been confined to advocacy, and I have a bit, I think when I looked at the time, I have a bit over an hour. Sandra was generous to give me 10 minutes. As a teacher and lecturer, I care so much about the time I have and in the interactions we can have. So I'm going to spend very little time speaking so that I can hear more from you. The other thing I want to say is that digital advocacy, so to speak, and again, to reiterate Sandra's submissions, much of which I really agree with, is also off-the-line advocacy. And I definitely know that advocacy is not a new subject to you. But advocacy also oftentimes is one of the most misunderstood subjects. Because we live it, we do it, we try to do it. Oftentimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it right. It begins to look familiar. So if you ask anybody, what is advocacy? And it's a question I'm not going to attempt to ask, because the answers are probably as numerous as you would want to anticipate. But I'm going to do something. I'm going to drag you into doing something practical that to me is one of the key ingredients of advocacy. And I'll just pull out one of them, and that is time and timeliness. For you to be able to do effective advocacy, it has to be timely. For instance, we are here now, and I'll be selfish a little bit. As CCG, we are also keen that we have this conversation in the digital space. Sandra told us how China is communicating public official position on the various platforms. I want you to draw an example from our own president. Every time, lately he takes to Twitter and talks of Bazukulu. Starts by saying, my Bazukulu. We just had the last moment here when we were trying to reflect on what we take home. So behold, can you pick your phones? The time is now. I'm giving you 5 minutes. This is the hashtag. The instructions are tag Civic Space TV, tag CCG, tag your organization, tag Oxfam. Talk about this event and your experience. We're talking advocacy. Timeliness is important. The time is now. We need to hit the ground with our message. What's her name? The lady from FIDA? What's your name again? Omega. As you're doing that, I'll continue speaking. The reason why I'm asking you to do this is that Omega made some interesting concluding remarks. Her argument was the message of action. She was saying, we operating from Africa are operating in a unique space. and we have challenges that might be peculiar to us. And therefore it is important that we need to galvanize our voices. I'm mentioning some words which are actually advocacy. I will summarize them here. I talked about so we are talking advocacy. Key considerations. One, timeliness. Timeliness. The other is voice. The other is action. And this is not in any intended order. They can be used interchangeably. The other thing I need to put here, a point to note, online or off, again, the key principles don't change very much. In the first slide I have here, and you'll allow me skim through these slides, I talk about advocacy being any form of public support or recommendation for a particular cause, be it policy, be it a campaign, be it any particular engagement. But and this can come in many forms. The acronyms around it could be the word support, the word argument, the word arguing for, calling for, pressing for. So right from this point, you'll find that it is important to then sort of know what your issue is. Hey, I'm having a problem with the slide. The issue of content. So I just want you to paint a picture. I want to give, I looked at something here. When you're looking in terms of content, there is this communication, which is a police report, actually. I'll read it verbatim and see whether we can use it as a frame in our minds. This is an overview of cybercrime in Uganda. And it says in 2024, Uganda experienced a significant rise in cybercrime, with reported incidents increasing by 93.5% in 1 year. The percentage, 93.5%, compared to 2023. This resulted, and take note of this, this resulted in losses of, next slide. Okay. This resulted in losses of 72.1 billion. How much? 72.1 billion. That is what we lost to cybercrime in 2024. Out of this amount of money, the only money recovered was 420 million out of 72 billion. So not even 1 billion was recovered. One of the major factors contributing to cybercrime in Uganda, as noted by the police, is increase in youth unemployment, which leads some to turn to cybercrime for quick money. So, in the initial discussions, we're looking more at the technologies, what they can do, what they can't do, what we can do with them, what we can't do with them. Here is now a scenario where we are being given opportunity to actually use these technologies. But then it's within a particular subject or field, and that is advocacy. Yes. You could have been engaged in advocacy yourselves in different in your different fields and in your different endeavors. But then, what is the approach? Because it differs depending on what you're doing. If, say, you're working with children and you're designing a campaign, you'd want to ask, what is the action here? Who are you trying to take the action to? Have you thought about the timings? Have you designed the stakeholder campaign? Have you designed the messages? The point I'm trying to make here is that the difference between a digital campaign and a physical campaign, advocacy campaign, is only in the form and not in the substance. When I use the word form and substance, do you get the differences? The technology only goes as far as working as a multiplier effect. Okay? That with advancement, now that you are exposed to technology, if you had 1,000 people on your WhatsApp group and you designed a targeted message, and by a click, hopefully at least 800 or 600 people are online, and in a snap they do what? They have that communication. That differs from traditional communication, where you're probably targeting radio, targeting TV, targeting posters, and then again you have to ask yourself these questions. At what time is the radio listenership at its highest or peak? You might need to also again go to even find out more. What kind of programs attract which kind of people? You know? If, say, for instance, you are working with children and your call of action is actually children, you want the children themselves. Let us take, for instance, the environment, and you're looking at children, raising the awareness of children on the environment. And maybe starting with something as simple as managing their litter in a school. Okay? Let's assume you placed an, for lack of a better word, let's call it an advert. And you place this advert at 9 p.m. Where's the mic? You place this advert at 9 p.m. Your action is targeting who? And you place at 9 p.m. when they are reading news. Because isn't that the peak? That's prime time. So you place it at? Do you think your message will go? I want some comments. And then as you give me that response, you probably also give me an experience. We don't have much time, so we need to be a bit brief.
Thank you very much. I think placing that advert at that particular time, 9 p.m., would be wrong timing, because your target audience at the time would be children. As we all know, at such a time, we have the old people watching news at that time. So probably you miss out the people that you would be targeting at that time. Thank you.
So the word, you raised the word audience, isn't it? So we add here the word audience. Yeah? Let me hear from another two people. What would be wrong? There's a hand there. What would be wrong with that advert at 9?
All right, thank you. I think by such a time, kids would be asleep, so they wouldn't get the information in the first place. But also, even if they were awake, their minds would have been exhausted to decipher the message. So it would have been a misplaced conversation, and the net effect would not be realized.
So what would be the right thing to do? Can somebody try?
Yeah, if it were me doing such an advocacy around environment, I would rather go to a school. If I'm targeting children, probably target a time maybe at the assembly, or do something but within school where I know that I will be able to get the children. Or alternatively, if I want to use media, then I will look for a program that targets children and use the time within that show, because I know that is where my audience is.
Yes?
Thank you very much. When it comes to children, we have to pay attention to the different things, the timings, the time setting. For example, we all know that if it is not during the holidays, it would actually be hard to have such children targeted material for such an advocacy. And so what I would suggest is that we must look at the instances of using such material. Let's say if it is during the holidays, we know that the morning hours when children are watching cartoons, because if you paid attention to Ugandan TVs, very few
programs are on Saturdays before 1, and I think having that targeting those programs that are broadcasting children material would be the best programs to target when pushing that campaign.
Okay, can we stand up? Can we stand up? Push your chair back. I realize that none of you went to my primary school, Because in my primary school, when they told you get up, and you got up with such noises from the chair, they would tell you sit down. And you'd ask why. Said, I only told you to get up and not to make noise. So, we have been learning mannerisms of how to conduct ourselves on the digital space. So there are also mannerisms in what do they call that part? There is that terminology, the media person. What do they? That terminology in Parliament. Oh, decorum. So can you sit again and get up with decorum? Okay, now get up with decorum. Oh, smart. So anyway, she looks like she can sing. Give her a mic. The lady in a black jacket. What's your name again? Yeah, Doreen, take us through. There's this song. We've just come out of Easter, so there's this song, Fishers of Men. Fisher, please. Hey, who can lead us? Let us stretch a bit. I can see that. Play without. Here. Okay.
Okay, so we shall do a simple exercise. Get space because you're going to touch your knees. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, nose and mouth. Is that enough?
Great, great, great. Okay, let us see it. Okay, I hope that brings back a little bit of the energy levels before I can. There's a hand somewhere here. Yes.
I just wanted to ask us all to ask ourselves whether media was a right platform for us to use when we are targeting our target audience are children. Are there other platforms we could probably explore and use?
Yeah, very good. So, listening to all these discussions, I have used one word here, planning. In any advocacy venture, for it to either succeed or fail, it all starts where? It starts at that stage. There is a temptation today. I have seen many posts. I'm sure you've seen this. Because we all have access to these gadgets and we all have quick thoughts oftentimes. I have seen something called surveys on social media platforms. And I'm sorry, I'll speak here very restrictively, being a postgraduate teacher and researcher myself. I find it's one of the most abused terminologies, both by individuals and even in our institutions. Let me just listen to two people. I know there are many forms of surveys, and whatever answer you'll give is a correct one. Just tell me, my friend here, give her the mic. What do you understand by a survey? No. The first, yes.
I think it's in a survey you're trying to find out something. Yeah.
And you think that there is a certain criteria to follow?
Of course. Of course, when you're doing a survey, it depends on what you're trying to find out. If, for instance, I'm trying to find out how much information do people have, for instance, about safety online? It would depend. I won't go to my mother to tell me about safety online because she does not even know. She does not even own a smartphone. Who I share that survey with matters a lot, and how much information they have that will feed into what I want to arrive at is very important.
Yes, I agree. Is there anybody else who wants to try?
Recently, while they were conducting the National Population and Housing Census, a number of questions were asked. I think those questions were surveys. The government needed to assess the number, needed to assess certain activities and household properties that we did have. So I think the word survey simply requires an assessment of any particular object or an activity. To that example, to that effect, I will give the example of the census which was conducted recently.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think a survey is simply a data collection tool. Whether you're assessing, whether you're monitoring, whether you're evaluating after an event, it's just a tool to collect data.
Now, look at in my slide, look at number 2. I said digital advocacy is the use of technology to galvanize people towards a common goal or objective by influencing, not the word influencing, public perception or policy making. Digital advocacy can be used for a number of objectives, including behavior change, policy change, fundraising, raising awareness, changing perceptions, or inspiring particular action. Okay, that being the case, now that you're doing digital, and probably you are acting on your own, and maybe without the support of a team. There are these words I've written here. The first one is attribution. The second is ethics. The other is authenticity. My question is, do you think these apply to you? Please pass the mic. I want you to pick one word and discuss it.
Thank you very much. I'll probably go with the word authenticity. There is no way you're going to influence public perception when you're not authentic in any way. For every sort of advocacy, in whichever form, specifically here, I see that the biggest thing is on digital advocacy. The moment you are not authentic, you are not going to have success, because first of all, advocacy works with things such as numbers, with facts. And the moment you do not have some of these things, you are not going to influence, you are not going to have an impact on how someone perceives something. Thank you.
Can somebody talk about ethics? I'm now going to choose. There's that friend of mine in pink. Here, the second lady. When I was there, she was a bit of my friend, was smiling. But now I've come in front here. She has changed the attitude. She's now acting like a politician. Yes. Ethics.
Ethics. So ethics in advocacy is very key. Ethics, first of all, means how you, how do I say, the kind of values you stand for in a particular aspect or advocacy space. For example, if you are a sexual health reproductive advocate and in your own personal life you do not respect women or children in that sense, and you are the one leading or spearheading an advocacy campaign, then there is a clash, you know, and you may stumble some people in the process of your advocacy. That is why I always have tough conversations. So I work in media. I always have tough conversations with different organizations and companies who have online hashtag advocacy campaigns. Let's say about voting, since we're in the voting period, or sexual health, reproductive conversations. Then they choose to use an influencer on X, for example, who is always continuously disrespectful towards women, and that is the kind of content they use 24/7, and it's what gets them the numbers. And then you find this organization using this same person who doesn't stand by the advocacy ethics of that particular topic, just because maybe they want the numbers. But guess what? And I think so many of us here work for different organizations. Learn to choose influencers who align with the ethics of the kind of advocacy you want to create. If you are working with children, use influencers who actually align with the ethics of innocence and, you know, children, not some random person who has 1 million followers. Yeah, I hope that can.
Bring the mic in front here. Hello. So all this, we are sort of going back and forth. We are talking strategy. We are talking principles, because they go hand in hand. Like what I get from her is that you can make a wonderful strategy, isn't it? Get the numbers, get the message running. You can run with the message. But at the end of the day, is it sustainable? Because there are people who will begin to ask questions. Yeah? So, just what kind of questions should you ask yourself as you prepare an advocacy strategy? At least 2 top questions in your mind.
The questions I would ask as I prepare an advocacy message.
Yes.
Would be, is my audience, I would think of my audience, the target audience, the people that I want the message to go to. Are they there? Are they available? And then, do I have the resources to carry out the advocacy message?
Okay. You've taken us to an area that I want to end with at some point. That is the question of resources. Very important question, by the way. I have some suggested questions here that I summarized from a good gentleman called Jim Skulls. These may not be exhaustive, but they could be the kind of things you want to ask yourself when doing this strategy. I have insisted that, yes, give him a mic.
Thank you, Doctor. My esteemed sister talked about influences, and I would like to take us back a little bit, and I need your assistance on this. For instance, if at all I package a material to communicate to the people, and the influencers that I deploy this message across are people whose reputation is under contempt. For instance, do not penalize me. For instance, if I use bad black to communicate certain things, or else if I use a person who has been corruption to talk about anti-corruption, would it make sense? So to throw some weight about the influences and personalities of the influencers while conveying the message.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. I think let's go through this. And maybe one of these questions, if you've interacted with it, or it sort of poses a challenge to your mind, then we can rethink it. But this is not all the questions, but this is just some of the questions. Like the first one is, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? You know, how do you make it happen? I think comes to the issue of who you choose, whatever strategy, because it's not all the time that we're only talking about influencers. Even us are influencers. For instance, what we have just done. If you go back here, if you go back to this case study, you see, when enough people get together to share campaign messages on social platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, wherever, they tend to get attention. And examples are given. You know the story of the Black Lives Matter. You know, it is something that happened in a land so distant. But today, because of the aid of technologies, and this now makes the difference between digital communication and what you'd call traditional media, for lack of a better word. Although it is interesting, and maybe those are some of the debates Omega was raising, that I think there is also need for us to sort of sit down and begin to ask some questions. Is there anything in terms of philosophical foundation that actually refers to African media or African communication? I want to give you images. Sometimes the internet looks like it looks magic to some people. But when I was growing up, I remember I grew up in a small town called Toro in the eastern Uganda. And there used to be a myth, an annual myth that used to happen. They believed there was a time of the year, I think coming towards either Easter or December, I don't remember very well. They used to believe some evil spirit would be running through. And if you did not get to defend yourself, if they entered your home, then something tragic would happen. And there would never be a particular date. I didn't even know who would start the program. But you'd find people banging whatever they would pick, you know, a drum, a plate, and in a very short while, literally the entire town would go into a frenzy. So sometimes I just keep asking myself, these technologies of communication that we are now seeing, internet, telecoms, could it be a question of interrupted Africa technological advancement? Because these are simply theories that I know a little bit of communication. There are some things they call nodes, that if you have one wave node from here to there, then all you need to do there is put a repeater element. So it repeats the noise that comes from here to there to there. In P3, I remember we used to have science fairs. And there are kids who attempted to do communications. Would get a box of matches, the inner bit, you tie a string to it, another guy goes very far. And actually, if you spoke, the other person would hear. So is it a question of disruption of our technologies? If we were given chance to grow organically, maybe we could have reached the extent that this has reached. The point for me here is that there is something African about us and the way we do our things. If you take this to the global scale and the technological discourse, is there something that we can add which maybe can protect us or keep our pureness, if there is anything like that? Or because These work. Yes, they do. Just like you're seeing. Black Lives Matter happened miles away. We got to know about it here. It's a question of racism. We picked it up. Some of us acted around it and all that. But there is the question of context. You know, there is the question of context. For instance, I'll give you an example. I know that for media, for publishers, especially the newspapers, unfortunately they are also dying. But again, like I said, what happens offline is what happens online. The people acting as a consortia in a newspaper have all sorts of people, including lawyers, including advertising officers who will advise this picture is good for this picture will not be good for that. You have photo editors, but this time you are with this gadget and you are everything. Are you seeing the point? Including reminding yourself that you're operating within a legal framework. Actually, I would encourage you to read this guideline, the Civic Internet Handbook that CCG has produced. It's very rich. And it's very rich and it is contextual. Why? Because of the methodology. There were interactions with the stakeholders like you. And you sort of pointed out which were areas of concern for you and areas of interest. And this is how the people who worked on this handbook developed these notes. So you find that it then happens that if you follow these criteria, you could probably come up with a different product. So what is happening offline happens online. But how much do we deploy that? That's why it is important that even if you are relating to activities that have succeeded, like the episode of Black Lives Matter, you need to constantly try to contextualize your own situation. And that's why, for instance, you need to ask yourself some of these questions. So, after anticipating what you want, you also need to anticipate even what they need to hear, like what you're saying. You are trying to do a campaign towards women. But in the same message, you are insinuating vulgarity, you are insinuating insensitivity. You know, right now I know that there is a very big debate. I think I hardly see any these days. Those days, if you wanted to advertise a good car, you needed the okay, I'll not say. You need to ask, who do they need to hear it from? The issue of the messenger, the voice. Huh? Our friend at the back was saying, or was it our good media friend, if somebody has been convicted of corruption, how do you get that person to speak about corruption? It's like now getting a member of parliament today, and you see there are contradictions. In advocacy, they say messages should be carried by prominent people, isn't it? Yeah? True or false? But now, defining who is a person of prominence. For instance, our members of parliament. If I open this debate, I will not manage. The word is prominence. And you know that there are debates around it. The other is, how can you make sure they hear it? And that is the targeting and the audiences we're talking about. Then our good friend here talked about resources. What do we have? Now I want to say, and this is an important point, I'm going to share these notes at some point with you, since we have your addresses. Resources is a very important issue. For instance, right now, you know what is happening globally. The leaders of the world seem to be, you'd think they are conniving. I teach international relations and security. And I'll tell you that it's a very interesting trend going on in the world right now. America, with the Trump, you know what's going on, that one I cannot even, some of you understand him better than I do. But America is beginning to look inward. If you go to Europe, which was our only beacon of hope, but even in Europe, there's something interesting happening. They are what they call rightists in Europe. The other simple word is that they are also nationalists. Who knows what happens with nationalists? Please, where are the mic?
They put their country's interests first over like other countries' interests.
Yeah, so we are seeing that happening. Germany, the Scandinavian countries, Netherlands, Denmark, the parties that tend to advocate for more inward approach to their work seem to be getting into power. Actually, almost, they have been having elections in the last, since 2016, that trend is changing. So, not only the civic space is getting thinner, but also the resources to operate are getting small. Does that mean that as the human rights activists, as advocates, do we fold our bags and go back home? The answer could be yes and no. There is a big opportunity with digital space that now you can actually conduct effective campaigns with much less. And I think what we are trying to learn now wouldn't come at a better time than today. So which also means picking on these skills is not only enough for you to protect yourself, like we're trying to say, or build resilience. Actually, that's the better word. Build resilience. Because you see, you talked about bullying. The other thing about bullying is that it scares you off to begin acting less and less. But when you build resilience, or by building resilience, you can actually continue acting, or even acting, being much more active, but acting strategically and safely. You know, what you call self-preservation. It means that you are able to know the tools or the criteria to assess risk and be able to mitigate. So these questions are important. The 7 says, what do you need? How do we begin to take action? How do we tell if it's working? And I think that's the last part of this thing I will go to. That is the issue of measurement. Again, there's not so much in planning. There are some of these things I'll not repeat. For instance, planning needs to be smart. That's where the issue of being timely, the issue of singling out your message correctly, what action do you expect, how do you correctly identify audience, all come under here. I'll share this, so don't worry about it. Yeah, again, when you have a table like this, it's very important. There are things which look so straightforward, but oftentimes they are not. I know in your organizations you've gone through this whole visioning thing. Vision, mission, goals, or if you write projects, when you're saying it out here, it's so easy. But when you get to pen and paper, oftentimes you write a goal and it is a mission. You write a mission and it is an objective. You know, so it's a whole lesson in its own. But find time to try and get these things right, because they are very, very, very important. So that is where that smart business comes from. So planning. Then I'll just read that. And this is how you can get it wrong. For instance, when it comes to, this is an example of being smart or not being smart. When you say we will create a video about accountability for environmental issues in Brazil or in Uganda, so to speak, how many environmental issues are there? Huh? Can the environment be one issue? Today people are even struggling to differentiate between climate change and environmental issues. Some scientists are telling us climate change is just part of climate change. I mean, climate change is just but part of environmental issues. Others say climate change is everything. People say, no, the environment is no longer important. We have now moved to climate change. Then you ask, but what is climate change? Then the person begins going that way, goes to Kayunga, comes back to Kanzanga, you know, so it's very important. You say screening of our video will result in a more positive response from the public, will result in a more, can you measure that? Yeah? You need to put, those of you who have done a bit of M&E, you need to put figures to this. You need to know right now, where is it? If it is sitting at 30%, then maybe looking at the resources you have, looking at your strategy, looking at your scope, maybe you can only increase it by 5%. And you just say realistically, we shall move it by 5%, because this you can measure through your actions. The other is the video will make official ratify the Kyoto Protocol immediately. And in activism, we like those words. We are going to do this. Parliament must do it immediately. But if you ask yourself the process of preparing from white paper to first reading, to second reading, to a draft, a policy draft or draft of a law, to committee, to, how long is that? How long is immediately? Immediately is today, a week. Now you're even making it worse. Okay, I will see you after here as soon as possible. When will that be? Yeah, anyway, so keep the word smart, it's important. What could be smart, I think, is below. Provide video documentation training to Brazilian activists to collect filmed evidence of corporate violations of national environmental laws in southern Brazil, and submit this as evidence to national and regional courts. Is that possible? It's not possible. It is possible because it's actionable. You are talking about, you are specific about the content. You're looking at laws. You've also identified the area. You've also identified the audience. You see? So the key point here, my good friends, is that work online does not replace work off. So when you're talking about digital advocacy, don't be carried to think that when you see Tolit, you now say, Tolit, these are people who used to do advocacy of those days. You know, there is that tendency. Because there is also this generational divide. Yes, I admit, I may not be as savvy on the gadget, because if you even see my fingers, naturally they are a bit fat, so they are heavy, so I type even more slowly. My man here is always at my heels. You know, when you can't do certain things, you need to be strategic. So when I have a cup of coffee, I make sure I go and sit near him. And I ask, will you take coffee also? Even when I know he has just taken one. But because I want him to get this thing done for me. So even when we're talking about influences, don't think that if you cannot influence a colleague, okay? What's your name? If I cannot influence Rebecca, how do I now wake up to say, I'm going to influence the entire parliament? This should start with you where? Where you are. So I think we are fast running. Okay, we are supposed to end at 1. So I think I have 5 minutes, then I'll take 10 minutes of a conversation. Yeah, there's also how to launch a campaign. I already talked about timing. Yeah? Once you've answered these 9 questions, you could be ready to move on to the next stage of launching and implementing your campaign. But the key steps to a successful digital campaign include 5 main steps, and you can think about them. That is deciding your goal, like I've already pointed out, is very important. Figure out your target audience, key. Now, I will send you this. Even the previous presenter I had her mention the word persona. It's just like what I've just said. If you cannot influence the immediate next person, then it becomes challenging to begin thinking of influencing the next 20, 50. So there is also this thing called stakeholder engagement. I don't know, there is something called the Jaunties box. I don't know whether you've heard about it, but it's a self-determination exercise which many people are afraid of doing, but I think it's important you do it. It goes by many names. I forget the other name. There's something like this. It's a tool used a lot in psychology. What's the other name of this box? I know it has the Jaunties box. So these are windows. Who is familiar with this? So the arrows go like that. There is always 2 arrows. There is going out, coming in. Going out. Now you can customize these things. They can mean many things. But the idea here is that this is a self-reflection tool. What is important is that imagine this is your organization. Okay? Let's start with what goes out, this arrow which goes out. The first one, if you go like to websites, the first thing you see is who we are, isn't it? Huh? Who? Okay? And you write a lot of English, isn't it? Even as an individual, You have heard this phrase, you don't know me. Do you know me? Huh? But there is also a window, an arrow going, and this arrow says, this should, if you're saying who we are, this person should be, this one should be what people say you. Okay? You could be here, you could be saying what we do. Okay? Should actually be this one. But people know you to do. Okay? This is a very important stage in crafting campaigns. Okay? Because you really need, particularly if you're doing group campaigns, you really need to situate yourself correctly. Because you might say, feeder, for instance, yes.
Just a small question. What would be your other questions for the? What would be your other questions for the other parts of the jaundice box?
Okay. I said there are 4. So this is the. Let me make it easy. My friend who does journalism knows it very well. This you start with what, yeah? Where, when, why. Okay? Then they usually put plus a H. There is no straight way to use this box. Yeah? But you can try to answer those 5 W's. If you try to answer those 5 W's and align it to assessing who you are, what your peers think about you, what is this that you can do with peers, what is this that you can't do? If you can do, how are you going to do it? If you can't do it, ask yourself why. So, the whole point here is that there is a stage called stakeholder analysis. We are talking of the messenger. For instance, you could have, it's you who could be having the funding. Okay? You even have a good message. But you may not be the right organization to do what? To deliver. In my prime age, at some point, I went to South Africa to learn trial advocacy. I'm also a lawyer by training. And I went and I met a team that was being led by the man who had defended Nelson Mandela and the ANC for most of their trials. It's called George Bissos, a Greek man, who was now retired in his advanced age. And he told us that being a good trial lawyer depended most on how much you know the case of your client, how much research you do around it, and how best you arrange your team to go to court. And he says, that sounds perfect, doesn't it? Said yes. Then he adds and says, but there is something more. So we thought this was all you need to be a good trial advocate. Then he says, you also need to know the how. You need to know the how. The how is what they call scanning the environment. Scanning the environment. Now, these are very important things, and they may come not in a very straightforward manner. But in his case, for instance, when he was talking to us, he told us, for instance, once you know the court circuit, or at least what they were doing. Bezos, by the way, is a Greek, so he's a white. He was operating in South Africa at the time when most of the racial laws or framework was in place. So, and he was not the only lawyer for Nelson Mandela and the ANC. There were people like Thabo Mbeki Sr. Nelson Mandela himself was a trained lawyer, and the rest of many of them. But every time they got to this stage of stakeholder analysis, they would say, you know what, George Bezos, you lead the case. You'll be the lead advocate. Why? Why? He was white. Okay? And he's going to meet white people. So he could have probably not been the best lawyer. But every time they scanned the environment and decided probably the judge they were going to or the magistrate they were going to had strong racial sentiments, then they presented him as the lead counsel. We saw an example of that recently when they brought Martha Karua. When Martha Karua came here, it's not that Martha Karua is the very best person to argue that case. Martha Karua has been out of the court circuit for over probably 15 years. Yeah, she's a good lawyer, she's a jurist, but probably she's not the best. But given the circumstances of that case, you find that people like Elias Lukwago, who were counsel, are also politicians. They have also been haunted by the same regime. They have sometimes been picked like chicken thieves. So, it goes back to the issue of strategy. Now, strategy is not that you can be able to hold ground. You can be able to hold ground. I only have 5 minutes. So, there are plenty of examples. I was talking about personalities. So this is how you have these people with you. You have a team. So you need to look inward. Omega, you are asking me. I was telling you that there's what, where, why, when. You can use this in many forms. But even for your internal teams. But you can also use it outward. Who are you going to meet? And you see, when you have what here, it's not only that you should ask the what question, but this should be the lead question. The rest of these otherwise also can be used in the same box. But one thing I want you to be aware of at this stage, which is crucial, is that remember, whatever you're saying, whatever you think about yourself, whatever message you are crafting, know that there will always be a counter. Like for instance, there's somebody who talked at the back. I didn't see. Somebody was talking about a campaign. she was doing and then it was hijacked, especially digital, where there is imminent danger of identity theft, okay? Or where there is imminent danger of campaign hijack. You know? You've seen some of these things. You have seen sometimes the president come out, makes a message that intends to be a good message, and maybe cartoonist or somebody picks it, turns it around, uses the same message to ridicule him and probably attract, anger towards the message. This can happen to even your messages. So that is why having this in mind, set clearly before you hit the net, is important. I'll say the very last thing. Then, so characterizing people is important so that you know who you're dealing with. The social channel is important. You have website, you have blogs, you have newsletters. I'll just make one comment on this one. The challenge with some of these is also, for instance, look at these channels themselves can turn into a weapon against you. Look at, say, government. Have you looked at government websites? I think there are very few, but the information you get on government websites were posted 10 years, 15 years. So, and I hope this is not happening in your organizations. Because, like I was saying, that with the shrinking space and shrinking resources, digital gives opportunity for us to sort of get into self-help. I would not be the best person, but I can tell you that there are now many self-help tools. You can design your own website. You can go learn how to update it. You can, and there is a whole list of them. So the final thing I was trying to say is that the other thing that digital does for us, which probably was not possible in the past, is the question of giving us an instant opportunity to monitor and evaluate. For instance, I hope you guys did my hashtag. I am sure shortly after here, if we checked, you will see the algorithms beginning to change. So also when you're doing a campaign, it is important that you can monitor what is going on. I think as a way of conclusion, so digital advocacy is a strong tool in today's world where funds are being scarce and distractions are growing. The success of your campaign ultimately depends on how much work you put into it, beginning from the quality of your research, your monitoring, evaluation, plan, and the creativity of your content. I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles. Let's give Dr. Charles another round of applause, please. And to ourselves, let's just quickly stand up and stretch, and we shall just wind up. Let's just stand up and stretch. Stand up, stretch. Let's stretch. As we stretch, Mr. Hood Lubowa, you can be making your way up here. Let's stretch. Thank you. We can have our seats. Just as a way of precursor, as Mr. Hood Lubowa makes his way to give us the closing remarks, I would just like to ask, from today's session, in a nutshell, what are the key takeaways that you think you have been in position to understand, or, as you go home, tell a friend to tell a friend? Just a few hands can tell me what you picked. Or I can randomly as well just choose without, the hands going up. Any hands? What have you picked today? What have we picked at least? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what I'm taking home is the digital advocacy strategy. Advocacy or in the digital spaces must have a strategy. It's not a matter of just doing something, but you must be guided. He spoke to the so many questions that come forth. What do you want to communicate? What do you want people to hear? How do you want to do it? What do you have? What do you need? Such things. And for me, it opened my eyes. Sometimes you think about an advocacy campaign, and of course there is this that you want to do, but you do not plan very well. Sometimes you don't even think about the measurements. How do you measure success? How do you go back and say, okay, this is what I wanted to achieve, this is where I've been, these are the gaps, so that the next campaign comes out better. But also for me, what touched me most, and I am rethinking, is the mixing of the goal, the mission, the objectives, and then the vision. I think sometimes these are things that continue to sometimes to change if you don't plan well at the start. You realize that as you're moving on, maybe the mission should have been the goal. Maybe the bigger vision is different from where you want to go. I think founders of the different organizations in this house will testify that as you found an organization, sometimes what you want to see as a goal begins to change, and you're like, okay, is this the goal, or this was just an objective of the bigger thing that I want to see? So yeah, it has been a very insightful session.
Thank you. That's quite intriguing and interesting. Glad you picked that out, and glad it was helpful. Yes, Omega.
I like this session too so much, not only because it was about advocacy, but I was asking about the jaundice box, which I liked the most because it had what, when, where, how, why. And for me, what was intriguing about it was not when you ask yourself those particular questions, is when you throw them to the other party, right? So say, for instance, you want to do a campaign around this. So instead of doing the jaundice box for yourself as an organization, think, okay, who are those people and what do we think they are? But the reason I asked what were his other questions much earlier on was because I said in my mind, I said you can change the questions of the jaundice box. If you were doing a campaign around sexual violence, right? So our jaundice box would look like, what do people think sexual violence is? What do we say it is? And what do we want to tell them it is? So for me, it was really something nice.
Glad it was. Grateful, and it was interesting. Anyone else has something to say? All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles. Thank you very much, Ms. Sandra, for the wonderful presentation. Yeah, the influencer space. Interesting.
Yes, I needed to emphasize that one of the things that also caught my attention is the influencers that we use. Do you know, I don't even know how you strike a balance. Like the influencers that we have online, sometimes you have a campaign and you need an influencer to really drive this, but they don't per se subscribe to what you believe in. But you know they will fetch you the audience that you want, the likes and the retweets and everything. So it's really actually key that the influencers that you choose, the messengers that you want to take the message, the people at the front have to be in line with the message, not speaking otherwise, having bad black speaking about parenting. Exactly.
But you can as well just spark it a little, and then we just conclude, because I know we have lunch going on. But yes.
I really like the conversations around influencer marketing because it's something I actively do. But I don't think there's ever a situation where you want to use a particular influencer because they can fetch you the kind of audience you're looking for a particular, let's say, conversation or advocacy theme. For example, let's say you want to speak about education, yeah, about education, and you're sure that this influencer has over let's say over 70k followers, but the content they're actively posting is obscene or contradictory. You know, these days they even like doing they like doing they call it media bait, rage bait. They even do rage bait content. Kumbe, you're trying to drive a serious campaign, you know. So I think even the biggest question should be, are you looking for the right kind of impact, or you're looking for just numbers? If you're looking for just numbers, then you use that one. But if you're looking for actual impact, it makes sense to choose somebody who has influence in that particular community you're trying to send your message to. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, you have made a lot of sense. But let's keep the conversation going. Please go ahead. The hashtag is there. Recipe Project, Digital Rights UG, hashtag Civic Space TV. Go ahead and tag Center for Constitutional Governance, Civic Space TV, and Oxfam. Yes, Doctor?
I would just like to congratulate you and appreciate that our playbook exercise to try and post under the principle of time has worked out. I've just seen my team has made a summary. The recipe project is trending #2 in Uganda. Congratulations.
Thank you, and kudos to everyone who is moving the hashtag. Of course, we need to let people know what we're talking about. Otherwise, let's have the concluding or closing remarks from Mr. Hood Luboa, from our partner, Oxfam. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Drake. Is Sandra still around?
Yes, she is, but she's up in a meeting.
Now, I wanted to tell her that as she was talking about security, I keep over 30 passwords of mine in a book. So I had this metallic suitcase I used to use in Form 6, and I stuck it there, and is the microphone good? Okay. And I stuck it there under key and lock of 3 padlocks. How am I faring? I always pray that I'm not betrayed by the work of an arsonist. Yeah? So while we have studied a lot on security and safety, we might also reflect on that. But you know, our Minister for Finance told us that money will come, right? And I'm waiting for money, and I want it. So Drake, I've shared a link with you, which says I'll get some 600,000 if all my contacts share the same link. If you could be kind enough to share the same link with all our participants, so that we all benefit. Letters for the day, Drake for hosting, and I think Philip has been so much. Philip has been so much into the fold. The media team that is around for us to be trending. I then have to thank you so much, the participants who are here today. Many thanks from myself, CCG, and Oxfam. We are really grateful, and we pray that this is of the greatest benefit for all of us and the communities in which we work. As I was coming here, I remembered a story that I thought I would share, and it's a story of a girl called Amina. Now, Amina, one time in a very small village, landed on a mythical mirror. Now, this mirror
used not to reflect faces, but it reflected secrets, desires, and fears and passions. And she was thrilled by the mirror, that it would look beyond you and deep inside you. So the mirror was stolen. Then I asked a rhetorical question. How do you think Amina felt when the mirror was stolen? But it also reminds me of one of my favorite writers, Khalil Gibrani, when he published his book in 1918 called The Madman. Now, when he published that, in the monologue or in the opening parts of the book, he says that when he went to the river to swim and undressed, his clothes were stolen. So he decided to move through the town as he was born. And everyone was shocked. And the boy in one of the flats shouted, "Oh my God, he's a madman." But in his response, he said he was set free because madmen are prisoners to no one. He said sanity imprisons you because you always have to be correct. Just like Dr. Charles had to be correct, Drake had to be correct, Sandra had to be, and we all have to be. So Khalil says that is imprisonment. But going back to the story of the mirror and relating it to our topic today, you realize that the internet mirrors most of us in society. And conversations around privacy, around cybersecurity, around literacy become outstanding for us because they are not luxuries in this age of digital technologies. They are tools we have to live with. And our commitment as Oxfam with CCG remains steadfast in driving, in having a digital economy that is literate. And in this, we are having all these initiatives through trainings and different engagements like the one today. So, as we reflect on today's takeaways, we have to realize that today was not only about discussions on the internet. It was really about how we live safely and meaningfully. And you know, we talked about the fact that we are trending, and I know we are, Drake, I don't know whether we're on TikTok, but we must be on different platforms. But in a digital economy, every like, every share, I think TikTok has that red heart. I hear so many people request for it. Give me a heart, give me a heart. You know, in every share, in every heart, in every like, it leaves behind a digital footprint. And in advocacy, that footprint can either inspire or expose. And in this case, it relates so deeply with the conversations we've been having on advocacy and literacy and security. In conclusion, I know we are all appreciating the fact that we are living in a digital age. Life is becoming online, but such engagements helping us appreciate that to live in this age of technology, where we are also advocating for different rights and different technologies that we are using, we should engage not only with knowledge, but with deep wisdom for us to have meaning. In conclusion, I would like to say that CCG and Oxfam, as we are co-funded by the European Union, we remain committed to shifting positively the digital economy of our country and beyond, and also making meaningful impact in the livelihoods of the communities that we serve. I thank you. Be blessed.
Thank you. Let's give Mr. Hudlubo another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate. To you all our dear participants, would like to say thank you very much, first of all, for honoring the invite. Thank you very much for keeping time, and thank you very much for an interesting and engaging conversation. Today we have been talking about, of course, the internet and how to use it and all the necessary tools that we need to employ to see that we safely prioritize and also put out our work out there. For me, a key takeaway, and I think to all of us, as we continue to be the change we want to be in our societies, as we use the tools that we're using, let us, the knowledge that we've gained here today, go outside there and also disseminate it to others as well. But that goes without saying. Of course, the information and the training we have gone through today is on our YouTube channel, on Civic Space TV. So you can go ahead and revisit it, but also share it with your friends and colleagues and family who you think can benefit from this information. You can as well go ahead and post it on X. As I said, the hashtag is Recipe Project, Digital Rights UG, and Civic Space TV. Otherwise, my name is Douglas Dreconel. I've been your host, moderator, whichever form you would like to put it, for today's session, and I'm very humbled and privileged that we have had this wonderful discussion. Otherwise, I would declare this particular event done, and we can peacefully go for our lunch. But as we go for our lunch, we are facing a technical issue, internet as well. We're supposed to digitally send to you all your transport refunds, but we're having that slight headache. So